Before the Yama update, the Chasm of Fire was a place you'd hardly ever visit outside of maybe a Konar Slayer task. After the update though, this place is a living, breathing ecosystem with so many activities for different types of players. This to me is what makes it one of the best updates we've ever seen in old school RuneScape, despite some of the controversy that comes along with it. A lot of people will call this the Yama update, which I think makes sense from like a marketing perspective for the game, but really to me this is a Chasm of Fire update, and every single activity in the Chasm of Fire feeds into another aspect of the game. It's very tightly woven together, which I really like. You'll have situations where low-level activities feed into high-level activities, skilling feeding into PVM, PVM feeding into skilling, and even more. But we're gonna first discuss Yama himself. Yama is one of the best bosses I've seen added into old school RuneScape. I think it's got a great balance of mechanics. It's a place where you can definitely sink a lot of KC, but not get super tired from doing it. There are aspects of the fight that slow down the fight a little bit, and then parts that speed up that require more focus. And I think that's a great way to balance a boss like this. Now, it was touted as a endgame boss. You could make the argument that this isn't quite endgame, but endgame is such a wide spectrum. Things like Chambers is considered an endgame, and Inferno is also considered endgame, and those to me are two different sides of the spectrum. This definitely falls more towards the, Chambers endgame, we'll say. This is a duo-focused boss, though it can definitely be soloable, and there's some debate as to which one's, more efficient. I like duos because some of the drops definitely favor being in a duo. The pet rate is flat, so duo is going to be better with more kills per hour. Lockboxes is also a flat rate, so more kills per hour means more lockboxes, and the loot inside of it isn't based on contribution either, so duo is better there. And then the demonic tallow barrels as well, you only get one of those as a drop, so in a duo getting more of those is going to be better. So drop wise, I give the edge to duo. There's also mechanics that will get you to lose some prayer points and some HP if you're in a solo and doing melee. Where in a duo, you don't have to worry about that. Duo is definitely more chill, solo is definitely a little bit more challenging, but either option is fairly viable in my opinion. There are a lot of great mechanics in this fight. The obvious one is when you first see the meteor attack and you're looking up like Willem Dafoe and you don't know what to do. That was very fun. That's novel over time, definitely. But the big thing that makes this fight very enjoyable for me wasn't even necessarily designed this way, but the P3 mono fly or dono fly, whatever you want to call it, is super satisfying. Now, it's called fly after the butterfly from Akka, but in my opinion, this is very different. The butterfly with Akka is more just about running away from him and avoiding his attacks, and I honestly don't like it that much. This to me is a lot more about being in a cycle, which is more akin to 4-to-1 Ohm. I am a huge fan of solo Ohm, specifically 4-to-1 Ohm because of the timing and the way you skip attacks, and this to me is the closest thing we have in the game to that, and it just feels so satisfying to pull off. Outside of the boss fight itself, one of my favorite aspects about Yama has to be the drop table, specifically the number of uniques on this drop table. We of course have the standard uniques, the Oathplate armor, the Soulflame horn, and of course the pet, but on top of that we have a bunch of other more common uniques that you won't get anywhere else. The dossiers, which give you contracts, diabolic worms to help you with angler fishing, aether catalyst to make aether runes, demonic tallow to make search pots, lockboxes, which are always fun to open, of course, Oathplate shards, and I guess the teleports are unique as well. But eliminating the teleports, overall, you stand about a 35% chance to get a unique on any given KC, which is fun, in my opinion, and it keeps the table feeling fresh and more unique compared to other PVM drops, which are a little bit more standardized across all of old school. One of the uniques I want to talk about specifically are the Oathplate shards. These are shards that you'll get passively fairly commonly over time, and they sell for good GP, but if you keep them, once you have 450 of them, you can craft a piece of Oathplate armor. The intention here is that if you're doing Yama and let's say you have 2 of the 3 pieces and maybe you've gotten a couple dupes, you're going to be able to have enough shards to make your 3rd and final piece. You're not going to get the log slot for it, so if you're a clogger, this isn't a workaround for that. But this is a form of dry protection. The old school team has been experimenting with dry protection recently. We see with Moons of Peril, you can't get a duplicate piece of the set until you complete a set. We've also seen with Desert Treasure 2, the Soul Reaper axe being into 4 pieces is an inherent version of dry protection, despite me going like 10,000 KC dry on it. And of course, the rings from Desert Treasure 2 are the really big one, where you get the 2 out of 3 invisible drops first before you get the final completed ring. Now, these have been met with mixed receptions. I think a lot of people really dislike the ring mechanic, but this form of dry protection, in my opinion, is probably my favorite attempt at it so far. And the best part about this too is you're not punishing people for getting lucky, or you're not removing the ability for people to get lucky. You can still get a piece of the armor like right away super quickly, or go super dry for it. Whereas something like the Soul Reaper Axe or the ring drops from Desert Treasure 2, because of the way they're structured into multiple pieces, it's more unlikely for you to go super dry, sure, but also equally unlikely for you to get super lucky. So you can still get lucky at Yama and make some passive money along the way if you decide to sell these shards. If you decide to keep them because you might craft a piece in the future, if you're wondering how long it takes to gather enough shards to make a piece, assuming you're not breaking down any Oathplate, it's about 560 solo KC to get enough shards, or about 1,000, a little less than 1,000 duo KC to be able to craft a piece. Hopefully by then this would be your third piece you're crafting, and in my opinion, 1,000 duo KC to have the full set is a fairly respectable amount. We're going to switch gears now, and we're going to start talking about the ecosystem of this update, the part of this update that's larger than just Yama, how different things feed into different activities, skills, accounts, etc. And the first thing I want to talk about is a situation where we have a PVM thing feed into skilling, and it comes in the form of 2 drops on Yama's table. Diabolic Worms and Aether Catalyst. These 2 items both feed into skilling, fishing, and rune crafting. I did a whole video on Diabolic Worms you can check out here. I absolutely love this item. It ends up being a way that you can fish anglers super quickly. Your XP goes higher as well, and it's actually really good for pet chance, believe it or not. And then we have Aether Catalyst. I haven't done much of this myself, but I believe this is fairly good XP and decent money. So it's 2 situations where you've taken a PVM drop and you've buffed skilling. You make more money from skilling, you get more fish from skilling, more runes, as opposed to just dropping these runes or dropping these fish as a drop on his table. Then we have the opposite. Skilling feeding into PVM, and this comes into place at the Shale Mine at the bottom of the Chasm of Fire. It's a great analogy for the update. It's a very small area that's packed with so many goodies. In this mine, there's 3 different mining methods you can do. You can do the Shooting Stars AFK approach, or you can actively hit the rocks, but if you're going to actively hit the rocks, you can do the 3rd method instead, which is tick manipulate these rocks. Now, tick manipulation is an area that I've always avoided, but this update added something that allows you to actually learn how to tick manipulate. Jim's Wet Cloth is an item you can get from Jim the Imp here, and this item is effectively going to teach you how to tick manipulate. If you're interested in my journey of how I use this item and how I learned how to tick manipulate here and outside of this area, you can watch my video here. Highly recommend if you're interested in learning that. But otherwise, this was an amazing part of the update I did not expect. Just being able to learn a skill that's always been around and being able to introduce it this way just makes this such a S-tier update. When it comes to skilling feeding into PVM, what you do here is you mine this Infernal Shale and crush it down with a chisel. This crushed Infernal Shale is used alongside Oathplate shards to craft the pieces of Oathplate armor. They could have just made it so that you're crafting the Oathplate armor with just the shards, but they were clever enough to tie it to a mining method so that we actually have skilling feeding into PVM here. And this actually makes it a pretty good money-making method as well. This is something I could see them doing more in the future if this ends up being stable over time. Hopefully that's going to be the case. But I love them tying skilling into PVM in this example. So those are some really great examples of how skilling feeds into PVM and PVM feeds into skilling. But there's more than just that. There's a situation where lower level methods or easier methods can feed into higher level methods or difficult methods. This is from the contracts you can get from the demons within the Chasm of Fire. By taking out the demons in the Chasm of Fire, especially based on the glyph they had in a very specific way, you'll be able to get a bunch of Radiant Oathplate contracts. These are specifically the contracts for the cosmetic variant of Oathplate. Now this is actually the best way to get these contracts. You'll definitely get a few of them from Yama as you rack up KC, but this is going to be a lot faster. This seems to be met with some resistance by players. Some players have said that Yama should be the best method. No one wants to take out these demons, whatever the case is. And I actually disagree with that personally. Yama doesn't have to be the best everything, okay? He already drops a bunch of other things. As someone who has done a lot of DT2 and has to farm more orbs, I don't want to go back to a boss. I wish I had an alternative way to get these orbs like this, something more AFK. So what this does is it allows these lower level methods to feed in to these higher level methods. So it just continues that ecosystem. Lower level players can come here and probably make a good chunk of change selling these to people trying to get their Radiant Oathplate. Or if you're someone like me and you're an Iron Man, I can do this on my downtime and hopefully have enough contracts to eventually get my Oathplate. If there is any criticism with this update, it definitely circulates around these contracts. Firstly, the drop rates originally were horrid. They were supposed to be more common than Awakener orbs, and they definitely were not, even through this method. They had to buff them to the point where they're 18 times more common than they were on release, and it's kind of wild that they were that off base. But you know what? The old school team is very responsive and they did update them. I know a lot of people who are merching them are probably extremely upset by the amount of money they lost, but as of this point, I would say the drop rate on these contracts are in a really good place. Now, when it comes to actually doing the contract fights, I haven't done any myself. I don't have enough contracts or experience yet, but from what I've seen, they look a little frustrating. They seem to be a bit too long. It's like 13, 15 minutes. 2/3 of a TOB to do one fight is just way too long in my opinion. And then I think they're struggling to get the balance between something being challenging versus annoying. It's a very fine line, don't get me wrong. And I think in this case, a lot of the mechanics seem to be annoying. And then the other thing is a lot of the mechanics end up being restriction based, or maybe they're just spawning more of the same mechanics, like more of the flares. And I don't know, those are a little bit less inspired personally for me. I wish that there were just more unique mechanics added. Like I saw one, I think, where the fireballs were constantly spawning. I think that's totally fine, right? But you could add stuff like poison trails. He poisons you, right? So maybe something like that. Or maybe some sort of meteors, like smaller meteors that fall from the ground that, you know, you can get damaged by. Or maybe they permanently change the environment by cutting off some paths. I don't know. I think there's just more unique routes they could have gone. I don't know if they'll address this. This is much harder to address than drop rates, but I just wanted to share that. I think this update is just amazing overall, but when it comes to the contracts and the actual fights, I think they dropped the ball a little bit, but luckily they fixed the drop rates. All in all, the base Yama fight is arguably still one of the best fights added in this game, but this isn't just a boss update. This update came with so much more inside of it. If anything, this is more like an area expansion update than a boss update. So with that being said, I hope that in the future when they add a new boss, they think about how they could impact and expand the area around it, and potentially how it could impact other aspects of the game.